Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation focusing on the Treaty of Sèvres and how it dealt with Turkey. And by the way, I'll use maps on my slides for this presentation so that you can see clearly what was being proposed. But at the outset, do note, this was the treaty that began with war, so it clearly wasn't a success. But let's see why. First thing, as well as Britain and France being directly involved in the fate of Turkey, with troops on the ground when war ended, both Italy and Greece had had ancient empires that had included parts of Anatolia, or Asia Minor, the big chunk of Turkey that juts out into the Aegean Sea. And now they had their eyes on the prize, so to speak. Italy even more so, as it had been promised Ottoman territory in the Treaty of London. But all the time, President Wilson was trying to dampen the flames of imperialism, particularly Italian imperialism. He didn't exactly take to the Italians, seeing them as greedy for territorial gains. And in fact, the Italians had already walked out of the peace conference over Fiume, leaving them at a disadvantage when it came to Turkey's settlement. Still, at one point, French, Italian and Greek spheres of influence seemed to have been agreed, but it was an uneasy agreement, particularly where America was concerned, and even more so where the Turks were concerned. And what was always going to be a particular sticking point was the port of Smyrna, today's Izmir. It was slap bang in the proposed Italian zone, but the port had a sizable Greek population, perhaps a little over half of the total population, and its economy was dominated by the Greeks. Though in the surrounding countryside, the population was overwhelmingly Turkish. And needless to say, the Turks didn't want the Italians or the Greeks taking control of any of their heartland. In Smyrna, there was a history of ethnic violence. The Turks referred to the city as infidel Smyrna, but the Turks were being ignored. What happened was that, having first been encouraged to invade it by the British, in the treaty Greece was given Smyrna and East Thrace, the surrounding area, subject to a plebiscite after 5 years. An independent Armenia, the Republic of Armenia, was to be established in eastern Anatolia and united with the Armenia that had already been established on the Russian side of the border. Though the Turks still had control of the city of Erzurum, the Armenians were confident that they would be able to drive them out. Under the terms of the treaty, America was mandated to act as Armenia's protector. But when America withdrew from its international obligations, the whole notion of a free and independent Armenian state crumbled. The Turks attacked and seized back the territory they had briefly lost. The Bolsheviks attacked on their side of the border and did the same. The Kurds suffered a similar fate. They had been granted local autonomy in the treaty, the area shown on the map by dots, with the right to secede from Turkish rule altogether within a year. But as with the Armenians, there was no one prepared to support them, and Turkey simply ignored the terms of the treaty, and Kurds remained an oppressed minority under Turkish rule. Turkey had been occupied by an international force that included British, French and Italian forces in Constantinople, the French and the Italians in their respective zones, and as we have seen, the Greeks in Smyrna. And it also lost control of the important Dardanelles or straits, which linked the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. It would become an international zone, demilitarized, open to shipping from all countries, and governed by an international committee comprising America, Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and Russia, who would all have 2 votes each, and with Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey having 1 vote each. Its ports were made free zones and were put under the control of the League. The Ottoman Empire had been heavily in debt, even before the war, and Turkey's national finances were placed under strict control, including its budget and its national bank. Yet, like all the other powers held responsible for the war, it was required to pay reparations. Indeed, so severe were the reparations that, as with Germany's, they had to be revised twice. Its army was restricted to 50,000 men, and there would be no conscription. Its navy would be tiny, and as with all the other defeated powers, Turkey was obliged to accept the League of Nations without being invited to join it. But of all the treaties, this was the most fragile. Turks were outraged with it and refused to accept any of the revisions to its Turkish heartland or to accept occupation. It was seen as a national humiliation and deliberately provocative, and Turkish nationalists led by Mustafa Kemal, better known as Ataturk, soon set about doing something about it. But that will need to be covered in another presentation. Now, if you are finding my presentations useful, do please give them a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, do please sign up to my channel and tell your friends about it too. Spread the word for me. But for now, let me thank you so much for listening and wish you the very best of luck with your studies. Cheers.